Welcome, fans, once again. Yes, it's time to get the KKR family together for one final time before we head for the serious business of the mock auction. We've been bringing you these wonderful sessions, these engaging sessions that we've put under the umbrella of the science behind an IPL auction. We've been trying to decode it for ourselves, using your help, getting your questions, and of course, getting some great insights from within the KKR camp itself. We've heard from the CEO and managing director. We've heard from the head coach. Today, we've got some very key insights coming your way. But before they join us, here's a quick reminder for all of you. You've been asking, you've been waiting. Yes, that window to register yourselves will close at 3 p.m. on February the 4th. 3 p.m. on February the 4th. Not much time left. Enough time left to absorb all that we are throwing at you, and then you've got to get ready for what you have to throw back at us. Isn't it wonderful? That's why we are one big KKR family. All that's left is to assemble the galaxy of knights. And for one final time, to help us get into the science of the IPL auction in something we are calling unforeseen parameters, let's welcome our guests today. As you can see, I have managed to get myself all kitted in purple. The only thing missing is the gold. And it's okay, it's not missing, because the gold that I have with me to add to the purple comes in the form of my two guests who are gilt-edged as far as this KKR is set up goes for 2022 and beyond. Delighted to welcome Head of Talent Scout and Player Acquisitions, AR Srikkanth. Srikkanth, good to see you again.
Hi, Gautam. Good to see you too. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And of course, in a sense, making a comeback to the IPL, but no stranger to the entire fabric of Indian cricket, is Bharat Arun, who was, of course, bowling coach for Team India and now bowling coach with KKR. Delighted to have you on board, Arun.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here.
Srikkanth, let me start with you. I mean, I know when we get into the meat of actual games, things can be very, very hectic. But for someone like you, a time like this is even more hectic than when balls are flying all around the cricket ground.
Well, we certainly look forward to the auction and the dynamics of the auction, because we have an opportunity to build on what we already had, try to build a legacy and try to build a competitive team. So it's a good challenge to have, and auction is something which we all look forward to, especially a big auction like this.
But Arun, let me come to you. I mean, you've been responsible for changing an entire dynamic in Indian cricket. I remember in all my travels, particularly to places like Australia, South Africa, and England, I interact often with groundsmen, and the first thing they would do in a past era would be, Indian team coming? Oh, good. Let's get our pacers to get the perfect wicket for them. Now, things have changed. When a groundsman sitting at the MCG or at Headingley is preparing a pitch, he's thinking, oh dear, Bharat Arun is going to turn up with that lethal Indian bowling attack. What kind of pitch do we prepare?
I think it's been a privilege to be part of the Indian team, and also in a way I was blessed to have had a group of bowlers who are so multi-talented, and it was a conscious effort, I think, with Virat and Ravi, as I mentioned earlier, to be number one team in the world. And so to be so, I think it was important that we win under all conditions. And preparing this bunch of fast bowlers was biggest challenge. And the way they responded, the rest is history, and it's been outstanding.
Well, you've had a stint in the IPL before, but coming off of the success with Team India and building that nucleus, in a sense, that international experience must give you a little bit extra personally when you come into this setup.
Yeah, exactly. Having watched most of the top players around the world up close, you have a fair idea as to what they can do. And it helps you to prepare your bowlers better and also plan more effectively during the matches.
Now, of course, as we look ahead to the big auction, we're also looking ahead to the mock auction that has been so successful for KKR over the years. And we know that KKR's fans like to get involved emotionally, tactically, and they're very much a part of the entire setup. And as if you've been watching our sessions, we've been building up to the galaxy of knights. That is the ultimate objective of the main auction itself. We have our 4 founder members of the Galaxy of Knights, and Srikkanth, with the 4 players, the founder members, as it were, the 4 retained players, looking ahead to something like a mock auction, which you've been a part of. How helpful do you think it is for the process, A, for the management, but also for the fans?
Well, I think it's a good engagement to have. We can exactly let the fans know the kind of thought process that we put into the mock auction. At the same time, also get a vibe of how the fans want us to play the game and the brand of cricket that we want to play. It's a good exercise to have, and leading up to the mock auctions, it's always helpful that the players and the other plans, which is laid out by the team, as well as the fans, are in synchronization, and it's something which we look forward to every big auction.
Yeah, for those who are uninitiated to Srikkanth at a mock auction, there's a certain personality you've built up for yourself. Can we expect more of the same?
I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, same. Yeah.
That itself is a word of warning. But when it comes to they often call it a batsman's game. But Arun, you've seen whether it's Test cricket or now, of course, T20 cricket, which essentially is about 4s and 6s flying all over the place. Rules are skewed towards the batsman. And yet we've seen fast bowlers almost getting a redemption. There was a little phase for leg spinners and wrist spinners, but fast bowlers, a genuine pace attack in a sense, is also an asset in T20 cricket. Are you conscious of this turnaround, and you think it'll be redemption time for fast bowlers 2022?
Yes, I think so. I sincerely think so, because I think cricket is more, people think it's inclined towards the batsman, but I would look at it differently. I would say that therein lies an opportunity for me as a bowler to excel. There are limitations which a bowler is subjected to, but again, if my execution and if I can build a little more guile around my bowling, I have a chance to be a hero. So I would rather look at it like that, where there is an opportunity for a bowler to become a hero, and that would probably be the big mantra for this IPL.
The other reason, Srikkanth, of course, is because, to pick up on what Arun was saying, is with no disrespect for the others, you'd essentially say there are maybe 8 to 10 premier fast bowlers going out around the world, both Indian and overseas players. And now there are 10 teams. So is that something that comes into the equation with auction dynamics and the value going up even further?
Well, as you said, there are a few marquee names as far as fast bowlers are concerned, but with the level of competition the IPL has dished out to us in the past few years, I think there are a lot of quality Indian fast bowlers out there who can step up and play in the cricket. So I don't think it's only about these 8 or 10 players. There are definitely more quality fast bowlers, given the level of competition and the level of quality that the IPL has displayed.
The other point of interest, and I'll come to both of you on this, is that now that we actually know the list of players and the order of players, in a sense, I mean, it takes me back to school days when we used to be in class and maybe we are coming up for a poetry recitation for the entire class. It was always important as to where you'd be placed. If suddenly alphabetically you were called up, and I used to be called up 3rd or 4th, I'd never like it. I'd want to wait till the end to see how the others are doing. Now, trying to translate that into auction dynamics, there may be players who'd like to be the absolute first player up because everyone's got top purse. And yet others might want to actually wait till the end because one franchise may be going after you. So Arun, that is something that might change because the likes of, say, a Trent Bolt and a Pat Cummins are up at the very top of the auction.
Yes, definitely so. But then there's another side to it too. Coming at the top of the auction can be an advantage. Also, coming at a later stage the franchisees may feel that they end up with a bigger purse at that point of time, and so the player could be a little lucky too. So it all depends on the dynamics of the auction and how things pan out according to your plans.
Shrikant, from both your point of view, and if you try to put yourself in a player's place, I can only think from my poetry recitation in school. But going to the hardcore auction dynamics, where is it that you'd most ideally like to see a player from your perspective, and where do you think a player would like to see themselves?
Right. See, the auction dynamics is so unpredictable. It really depends on what kind of strategy you have and what kind of team you want to build up with. And like you saw in 2014, we picked up Dre Russ after he went unsold in the first round. Got him for, I think, 60 lakhs at that point of time. And we can all see what Dre Russ is. So it really depends on what kind of strategy you have and the kind of players you've retained and the core that you want to form. So it depends on that. And sometimes players coming early might get lucky, and sometimes players coming later might get lucky. Just depends.
Yep, we'll wait and see. At least we know the order right now. Everyone's starting to talk about it, and it just might affect the dynamics and, of course, the net result for the player. But there are lots of factors that have to be looked into. Right now, we're at a stage when even the venue is a little bit uncertain, because often when you talk, Arun, about picking players, horses for courses, your course is generally your home turf. Now, we're not always talking about a home turf advantage here. So you've got to sort of keep that in mind, looking not just for year one, but long term as well.
Yeah, I think so, because now with the actual dynamics and the pandemic situation, you really don't know where the matches are going to be played, and as such, you pick players who can adapt themselves to different conditions. I think a team that really has to do well, if you look at the history of the teams that have done well, I think it's bowlers adapting to different conditions. Even if you pick bowlers for your home condition, you necessarily have to play outside, 7 games outside. Now it's going to be even more, 9 games outside. So ideally, you would like to have bowlers who are probably good enough or adapt themselves better to different conditions. And that would be the biggest challenge during this IPL.
Shrikant, you agree? Adaptability is the key factor. On the one hand, we might say that, listen, out and out fast bowler, if you're not talking about a home surface, that's a quick pitch. They used to talk about it in the past. Kolkata at one point in time used to offer a lot of turn, doesn't necessarily always happen. But I think what Arun has touched on is adaptability particularly in the case of, say, a fast bowler.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think as a team, when you go into an auction, you want to build your team and you want to cover all your bases. You want to build a team where you can go and play in any condition against different opponents. So I can't disagree on what Arun Bhaji just said.
In fact, I think this is where your experience, since I referred to in England and Australia and South Africa with your international experience, now more and more we are getting bowler-friendly pitches, shall we say, in domestic conditions. But it's not always the case. And again, for your battery of bowlers, you would have wanted adaptability from the guys you'd be taking to an MCG, an SCG, or the Wanderers.
Exactly. See, the endeavor was to be the number 1 team with the Indian side, and to be able to achieve that objective. I think the biggest challenge was to have bowlers who could excel and who could get you 20 wickets in all conditions, and so. In order to do that, the first and the foremost thing is to now sharpen your axe, is to have the ammunition that you have, and also be able to quickly adapt to different wickets and adjust your lens accordingly for you to be successful.
Arun briefly referred to COVID, which has been part of our lives. It's very much a part of all our lives right now. And the thing we are all doing is adapting. But Srikant, all the more so when it comes to top quality international sport, because you're not just adapting to where you have to play and you might suddenly be forced to be in a new venue with no spectators, but also bubble life. That's something that you've got to consider, maybe expect almost. There may be certain players who might just pull out at some point in time. So all sorts of considerations you need to keep in mind, Srikant, which are not necessarily cricketing these days.
Oh yes, absolutely. With the uncertainty around how our lives have changed due to the pandemic and the way the sport is being played now, I feel you need to consider all options, and you need to just make sure that you have the right mental space among the players for them to be able to be ready to go to the park and perform.
And bubble life, Arun, is a reality for international teams as well as, of course, for franchise teams right now who are looking at now a long haul in terms of a single tournament.
I know being in the bubble is not easy, and actually, the last 1 year I've spent 80 days in isolation, so I can imagine what a bubble life is all about. But I think from what I hear from the players, the franchisees are going out of their way to make to create a great atmosphere. So at least the players they have their families around. There's a fantastic atmosphere around in the hotels which has been set up. So to a certain extent, you can absorb the pressure of being in a bubble. But yes, if you to be in a bubble is tough, and most of these cricketers now are probably kind of getting used to being in the bubble.
Now the big question is how many. We've had the situation of sometimes a leaner squad in the past of 18 or 19 players, where you look at essentially your 11 and a little bit of a backup or a bench strength. Now with 25 sort of being a reality, and Srikant, you deal with numbers all the time. How do things change? What are the pros and cons of having a leaner squad versus something like a 25?
You see, if you have a smaller squad of say 18 or 19 players, then it really tests your bench strength at times. And if there is any unforeseen circumstances where there's a loss of form or an injury to a player or any other COVID related stuff, then you have to really dig deep to get your resources and still have the same kind of composition that you would want to play. At the same time, if you have 24, 25 players, the challenge would be there would be a couple of players who may not feature in the entire tournament. And how do you keep them in a mental space where if the opportunity provides itself, they should be able to go out there and play to their potential? So that would be the challenge of having a bigger squad. But I feel given the current circumstances and how the pandemic has panned out, you would rather have a slightly larger squad than a smaller squad.
We remember situations 15, 20 years ago when an international team would have 11, maybe a 12th man, sometimes commentators having to get into whites because few people are down with injuries. So things have changed both for international teams, which you can now bring into a franchise setup with the number of players.
Definitely so. Definitely so. I think with the pandemic around and with the bubbles that are being created, we actually, when we toured Australia, we had 30 members on the last tour of Australia, and everyone stayed back. And also, like Srikanth was mentioning earlier, in the form of the uncertainties where injuries occur, then you have the players who are staying with the team, and then they understand the culture, they understand what's going on, and they understand their role much better. So there are advantages and there are disadvantages. Servicing the entire 30 players is a tough job for the support staff, and to make sure that everyone gets a fair opportunity also is going to be a big ask.
In fact, we had some almost, looking at it from the outside in the recent build up to the BBL final, the Big Bash, there was all sorts of scenarios because of COVID restrictions and bubbles and transferring from one bubble to the other, where there were almost humorous tweets going around, Srikant, where people were saying, anyone would like to turn up to play? Just put in your application and you can come and play in the final. There was the Sixers and the Scorchers, of course, and the Sixers were most affected by this.
Yeah, if I was living in Australia, I would have probably rolled my arm over as well. So.
Yeah, but such is the reality of the situation, where it's just about being in that scenario and you can be in there. Of course, at top level franchise cricket, it wouldn't really happen. But maybe not that extreme, Srikant, but you will have to be prepared for all kinds of eventualities when you know that maybe for a few days you lose a certain member of the squad and hence the balance might get affected.
Yeah, what we've also seen in the last couple of years from especially IPL franchises is that they do have more than 25 players with the squad in terms of having net bowlers or support players. Just like Arun Paji said, if there's an injury or if there's there's any unforeseen circumstances, then you have the player traveling with the squad and he doesn't have to do an isolation or a quarantine separately. So you have a ready backup. And we also pick our net bowlers in such a way where they are potential squad members if we need, and we just don't go and pick any net bowler to come and service the team.
The other change, of course, that we know is already there, referred to it once, the fact that we are going from 8 to 10 teams. There is the potential for a change in format, slight tweaks perhaps. There was initially a talk of maybe 2 groups. That's not quite happening at the moment. But Srikant, with 10 teams, be it the personnel that you choose, be it the auction dynamics, or even how you approach the games for the format itself, those are things that franchises need to adapt to and pretty much hit the ground running.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we don't know what the format is going to be like, but I think it could go back to how it was when there were more than 8 teams and the few editions that took place before. But I feel you need to have all your bases covered, and you need to have a squad which is capable of playing the entire tournament. In any case, IPL was a longish tournament. You had to play 14 regular season games and then into the playoffs. So you would want to have a squad which is big enough and have the quality of players in the squad which will play the entire tournament at the same intensity and the level that you would want to.
So the moment you're saying longer tournament, the moment you're saying more matches, we're coming back to where we started our conversation with building your bench strength. And again, that's something that begins right here, right now, starting at the mock auction, going into the real auction, Arun. And that is so important from a franchise perspective of building up that bench strength from now itself.
Yeah, I think it is extremely important to build your bench strength, and that is one aspect where KKR has excelled. It's not only during the IPL, also the players are taken care, they are given quality exposure and training after the IPL. Throughout the next 10 months, whenever a player is available, he is made to work on his skills, and specific coaches are assigned, and that is one aspect, I think, which is one of the most important things that we need to take care of whoever we have selected, and have a futuristic plan for them.
And once you have this squad in place, in a sense, and I'll address this to both of you, there's also a rotation policy you need to keep in mind as and when the tournament begins. We saw certain international teams, I can even maybe single out England, who have talked a lot about rotation policy. One is about sending players home in the middle of a series. The other is about rotating players you already have in the squad. Doesn't always work, Srikant, as we saw with, say, an Anderson and abroad not playing at the Gabba. Certain players who were in sizzling hot form in the middle of a tour to India were, they had 100 under their belt and they were going home. So sometimes the idea is right, needs to be executed well.
Well, I think it's completely different from an international perspective to a franchise perspective, because in international cricket, the international teams have deeper resources where they can dig into and get replacement players. But if you're picking a marquee fast bowler, you're not going to rest him for a rotation policy in a franchise-based tournament. So I feel the franchise would still want to put its best 11 to try and win the game first. And you would want to have as many backup players as possible if there's another situation where you need to give someone a break. But rotation policy doesn't necessarily work in a franchise environment, is my opinion.
Yeah, in fact, this is the stage when we get so much involvement. Letting both of you know, I mean, Srikant's already well aware of it, the involvement that we get from the fans, not just leading up to the mock auction, but generally in terms of asking the questions, keeping the franchise on their toes, but also showing the kind of love that they always have year after year. And we've been inundated with questions for both of you. We had to, for paucity of time, pick 3 key questions, and we are starting with Aruni from Kolkata. And this one is right up Bharat Arun Street. And Aruni asks, considering the advent of slower balls now more than ever, should we be mindful before bidding for a bowler who doesn't experiment with the slow ball and doesn't have it in his arsenal?
That's a very, very interesting observation. And I think it's very important today, especially in T20 cricket, when the batsmen come really hard at you, to deceive them. And slower balls is someone who can disguise a good slow ball, deceives a batter. And so it is a very important quality that we need to look for in bowlers, especially at the death, when this would go help a bowler in long way in executing his skills effectively.
Our next question comes from Darshik from Lucknow, and Darshik appears to be a bit of a numbers man, so no prizes for guessing who this is going to be addressed to. Yeah, Srikkanth, look out, this is coming your way. With all the statistics and numbers going around, is it advisable sometimes to go with your gut and instincts, or should we avoid doing that in the KKR mock auction?
I think it's advisable to go prepared. And the numbers and statistics are tools that help you to come up with certain strategies or certain clarity. But to have options for each of the categories that you have in mind, and over and above, I think there should be a sense of cricketing sense and cricketing intelligence applied to the thought process when you build the team. It's not purely based on numbers or just instincts. I think it's a mixture of everything put together, and it depends on how well you do your homework and be prepared when you go into the auction room.
Can you think of a situation where you took a piece of paper when you had done plenty of research on someone, tore it up, threw it, tossed it out the window and said, look, never mind the numbers, I'm still going to go for this person or not go for this person based on my gut feel?
Varun Chakravarti.
There you go. Straight and simple. That's the kind of answer you expect from A.R. Srikkanth. Absolutely. Yeah. There are times when you just have a feel for a player and something that he can bring to the table, and you just go for it.
Yeah. Varun was one of our picks for that.
And we hope we have many more like that. Of course, Varun very much part of the setup, part of the Galaxy of Knights, part of the founding members of the Galaxy of Knights, which is going to grow. Our next question comes from across the country, all the way from Baroda or Vadodara. Kinjal is the one who's asking this question, and it has to do with some of the overseas players who have had fantastic records around the globe in tournaments like the BBL and otherwise haven't been able to perform well in the IPL. What is the reason behind that? Is it only foreign conditions, or there are other factors and reasons as well? How do you judge, Arun, if you think a player who scored 800 runs in a BBL season, is there any parameter to be able to try and judge that?
I think you're not always guided by statistics. We just had a discussion on that. It's your gut feel when you look at a player, when you look at his attitude, and when you look at sometimes how he handles failure. These are the things that you look for in a player. It's not always, yeah, of course, statistics are extremely important for you to get an overall view, but I think there are other traits which you look in a player to understand and believe in that gut feel, and that would be an important factor when you choose players.
Fair enough. I know everybody, all our fans want advice. Of course, they're giving us lots of advice, which we love. Bring it on, keep it coming. But yeah, they want a little bit of advice from that. So the last word on this issue, Srikkanth, from you. You gave Varun Chakravarti as a really good example, but if you're looking in the distance, and of course you're an international figure when it comes to looking everywhere around the world, what is it that you would advise people, say using a Darcy Short kind of example?
I think it depends on the kind of team that you want to put together and the kind of backup that you want to have in your squad, and the skill sets that the player brings to the table. It might not suit our team, it might suit some other team, and vice versa. So it just depends on the kind of core that you want to form and the backup that you want to have for that certain core. So there are a lot of players in the auction, and there's a lot of quality out there. So we'll wait and see what happens with that.
Yeah, I think that's the idea here. We're not obviously getting together to divulge any secrets, as it were, and yet it's pretty much an open secret that maybe 8 franchises will be going after X player and how you go after it and what are the traits behind it. And that's the reason for us getting all these wonderful folk from KKR together to give us their thoughts. Before we wrap up, one message from both of you to all the fans out there who are going to be getting set for that mock auction. Arun, I'll start with you.
It's an exciting, it's a big thing for me to be a part of KKR. In fact, I was right from the inception of the IPL. I had an opportunity to come into KKR, but it never happened. So I think really, this would be a great season that we look forward to in the future. And we, I know the kind of fan base that KKR has. It is the love of the fans, and I know they would be rooting for us. We would do our best not to disappoint you guys.
Well, even before they root in the stands, on air, wherever they do it, they're already wanting to be part of the process. So Srikkanth, last word from you on everyone who's going to jump onto that mock auction. And of course, after Srikanth's message, stay tuned. We will give you another reminder of when that registration window closes.
I would like to say thanks to all our fans for the engagement that they've had and the love and support that they've shown for the franchise over the years. I think auction is always an exciting time to build your team into the future, and really looking forward to it. And please keep us supporting and, get the engagements going.
This is when he says all the nice things. When he comes face to face, the tough taskmaster is going to come out. But that's what this is about. It's the biggest tournament in the world. And it's the biggest, most international franchise as well with KKR. And that's why we like to be tough taskmasters. We will celebrate later. For now, it's about getting the galaxy of knights in place. Thank you so much to Bharat Arun. Thank you so much to AR Srikkanth. And all of you, stay tuned because I'm about to tell you the important numbers that you need to keep in mind.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, real pleasure.
Thanks, Gautam. Thanks, team.
Yes, with Srikkanth around, it's inevitable that you'll discuss numbers and statistics and player profiles. For now, the only number, as I said earlier, for you to remember are 4 and 3. 4 is February 4th. 3 is 3 p.m. That is the important number because that is when the registration closes for you to get into the KKR mock auction. We've got plenty of time. We've already got many registrations. We are waiting for many more. We hope you've enjoyed this entire series we've brought to you to try and decode the science behind an IPL auction, giving you enough feelers, giving you enough of a taste of what's to come, and of course, lots and lots of tips from the experts. But hey, they're not the only experts. We know all of you are experts in your own right. You're cricket fans. You've got a great base of cricket knowledge, and that's what you bring to the mock auction. So come and join us. There's, of course, jerseys from KKR with your name on it that 30 of you selected fans will get, and 3 of you, yes, 3 winners will actually get a virtual face-off with the think tank of KKR to put your ideas forward, and ideas that I promise will be taken seriously. You have all the facts and figures and deadlines in front of you. Now it's time to hold your breaths and wait for the hammer to fall, because when the galaxy of knights assemble, I can promise you the possibilities are limitless.